Hello, my name is Jeremy Barnes, and today I'm going to do a review for episodes 6 and 7 of Marvel Studios' What If, an animated series set in the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse on Disney Plus. Um, I have this bandit on my nose because I have a massive pimple right there, so just don't mind that. Um, but I'm going to talk about first episode 6, and that was the What If Killmonger Rescued Tony Stark episode. And this episode definitely highlighted why Killmonger is so great as a character, but it also showed why he can never be like a mainline Black Panther, which some people were kind of thinking he could be or they wanted him to be. Now that sadly Chadwick Boseman has passed away, so he would not be returning in Black Panther 2. So we're expecting that there's going to be some sort of replacement for Black Panther. And after this episode of What If, I don't think it'll be Killmonger. I don't think he's gonna come back into live action, or at least not to be the Black Panther moving forward in the MCU. But it was kind of cool to see like what I would have expected if that was to happen in the movies. It basically played out like that here, so that was cool that we still got to see that in some way. And it was just great to see Killmonger again in general. But even in this universe where he rescues Tony Stark, he's a bad dude. He's not good. I was expecting this episode to be where he's actually a hero and Tony Stark, who he saves, is the villain, and Tony Stark ends up turning his back on Killmonger. But it did not play out that way at all. And if it had, I think it might have been a little bit more interesting than this one was. But at least the way that they had it here, it was in character for both him, Jaraka, and also for Tony in a little bit. I feel like the actor for Tony wasn't the best. I actually think he was the first actor who was not the actual MCU movie actor um, to do a voice impersonation in this series who I didn't like. Like, I feel like everybody else has done a good job, or at least a decent job. But I don't know, something about this dude, I just made me not like him. Like, I didn't like Tony Stark in this episode. Um, like it sounded good, like it sounded a little bit like Robert Downey Jr., but there was just something missing. Like I think it was the charisma, it wasn't there. So that was definitely something that kind of took me out of the episode a little bit. And overall, I did not really like this episode as much as some of the others. But there were a lot of cool things in it as well, which I'll go into later. But I'm just gonna mention really quick, like the ending, which I feel like was the worst ending than the zombies episode, which was previously my least favorite ending to any of the episodes so far. And that one was bad because it was just like out of nowhere, like everything was good until that point when out of nowhere Thanos just shows up, and we're just left with that, like we don't see what happens. But here it was even worse because they already showed Shuri and Pepper working together in the trailer, which me I always like kind of break down frame by frame. So I had already seen a shot of that, but we didn't actually see that in this episode. So it was like something that we should have seen. Like I feel like we should have seen it, but it was not there. So I feel like the episode was not complete, which is I think actually the first time where I felt like that. Like there have been other episodes that had cliffhanger endings, but I still felt like the episode as itself stood fine by itself. But this one I feel like it was like half of a story. So I didn't like that part about it. And we see that Shuri and Pepper like they're gonna work together at the end, but we don't actually see anything from that like play out. So after seeing this episode and also the mid-season trailer for the show, overall, I think that the rest of the season will tie up some of those loose ends that we ended certain episodes on, and especially this one. Like this one will have a continuation. I'm expecting. If it doesn't, that's just gonna be bad. But I'm pretty sure it will. The way it happens, I don't know. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So now I'll move into the stuff that I did like about the episode. And my favorite parts of it were when Killmonger in the beginning after he saved Tony Stark and they have a press conference, he snitches on Obadiah Stane right away, who obviously we know, if you remember from Iron Man 1, was the person who hired the Ten Rings to assassinate Tony Stark without their knowledge. And Killmonger said that he was undercover with the Ten Rings and he saw that that was a thing. And I'm guessing like the Nexus event in this episode was that Killmonger already knew in the Sacred Timeline, like that actually probably did happen in the Sacred Timeline. Like Killmonger was undercover in the Ten Rings, and he knew that Tony Stark was gonna be like that there was a hit on him. Well, actually, no, that doesn't even make sense because the Ten Rings didn't even know. Unless Killmonger didn't know it was Tony Stark until he went. But in that case, I don't know why he would go. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I was gonna say though that maybe he already was undercover, but the Nexus event here, the thing that was different from the Sacred Timeline, was that maybe in the Sacred Timeline he just chose not to do anything about it, but here he kind of thought more into it and figured out a way that he could use Tony Stark to do the similar goal that he had in Black Panther. So that was like the thing that was different here. Another part that I liked a lot was Tony Stark just being excited to work with Vibranium because obviously Killmonger has that connection to Wakanda, and he had the little necklace that his father gave him. And then we also see that connection between Tony and Claw, which was mentioned in Age of Ultron. And we also see Claw's like base that he had in Age of Ultron. And then obviously that also factors into how he plays out as a character in Black Panther as well. And going off of that, like seeing Black Panther in here was awesome, and it was dope to see like T'Challa as Black Panther get some action because in the Star Lord episode, obviously T'Challa was not Black Panther; he was Star Lord, and the only other time he appeared so far was in the Zombies episode. But because he was missing a leg, he didn't really get to get in on any action. So that scene was dope, man. Like he was just taking out everybody, and it was like obviously heightened version of like the jungle scene from the Black Panther movie, but like he was super stealthy and it was dope. It definitely reminded me a bit of Batman, which Black Panther I think does share some similarities with Batman. But what happened immediately after that was like shocking. I was like, what? No way. When Killmonger came out with the like sound wave or whatever that Obadiah had in Iron Man 1, and he was pointing it at both T'Challa and Rhodey, who was there, and they were talking, but then he like shoots like a huge blast because T'Challa is about to go and attack Killmonger, probably in the same way that his father, T'Chaka, King T'Chaka, went for Killmonger's dad, Jobu, but Killmonger gets the last blow, and I thought it just like, incapacitated him. Like I thought it just made him pass out, knocked him unconscious. But then later on, when we see the Wakandan coffin, I was like, what the fuck? Like no way they just killed T'Challa like that. I was like so blown by that. But yeah, so like I was like, what the fuck? Like that was just crazy to me. And then obviously he killed Rhodey too, which that was insane. Two people back to back, and like he's supposed to be fighting for his brothers and sisters, but he killed two of his brothers back to back, which like I was like, what the hell? The line he said though to Rhodey was crazy though, and it was good. That was another thing that I just liked in general in this episode. Like Killmonger's writing is still up to par as it was in Black Panther about like the plight of black people in the world, and like oppression, I guess, against them. Like how he says to Rhodey, like you wear the uniform and you fight for your own oppressors, and like that kind of hit deep. And I'm very curious to see like how Don Cheadle actually feels about that argument because the way that Rhodey, the side that he falls on is like we got to be part of the system to change it. But obviously Killmonger is against that, and he's like, no, we gotta like burn the system down and then kind of start our own new system, or maybe not even a new system, but just somebody new on top in charge. And then later when he goes back to Stark Industries, it was even crazier when he killed Tony. But the quote that he told him, I think, was the best one in the episode, where like he has the spear, it already impaled Tony, and he's against the wall, and Tony's like, man, I thought we were gonna be like, friends until the end. And he compared themselves because they both lost their father at an early age, and they both like are like super smart geniuses who are like they want to make their fathers proud. But then Killmonger says like the difference between you and me is that you can't see the difference between you and me, and then that's when he finishes him off. And like that hit deep because it was true. Like Tony didn't see color, like he didn't see Killmonger as other because of his race. But that is something that is a very important like aspect to notice. And obviously like being black is super important to Killmonger specifically, and that's part of his whole goal in life. Um, so that was kind of crazy. Um, and then when he goes to Wakanda and we see with Queen Ramonda in action as the general of the Dora Milaje, that was dope because that was something that I never like even thought of, like that she would be or ever have that role. But I guess it makes sense because Wakanda is a culture of warriors, both male and female, as we see with the Dora Milaje as the head of the army there. Um, and like when she was fighting, that was all dope as hell. And and we got to see a little bit of Okoye there too, so that was dope that we saw her there as well as in the zombies episode. But at the end of that battle against the Stark bots, that like for T'Challa, with the tears rushing down Ramonda's face was like heartbreaking, man. Especially with the like real world implications with Chadwick Boseman, and like you actually felt that. Like I don't know, that just that tear hit me. Like I don't, it was super quick, but I like felt that. So that was kind of crazy. And in general, it was just kind of hard hearing T'Challa speak from the ancestral plane, which also had a very like kind of meta thing to it. Um, and this was the first time I think in the show where he actually sounded like weaker with the delivery of his lines. So I feel like um, his real world situation was affecting the work here. Um, I feel like maybe it was in the zombies episode as well, but I don't know if it was like because of the sickness or whatever. I feel like he was acting as if he was weaker because his character was weaker because he was like he probably hadn't been eating nothing and he got his leg taken off by Vision. So in this one, I don't think he needed to sound weaker because he's just like a soul in the ancestral plane, but he did sound weaker. So I think that was not like necessarily intentional, but the line that he tells Killmonger there was pretty great too. That his thirst for power will eventually lead to his downfall. Um, and it's cool that he like knew that it was his cousin. I don't know if it's something like some sort of knowledge that is gained when you go into the ancestral plane after you leave Earth. Because I don't think he would have known otherwise. Because we know in Black Panther the movie, he didn't know until like afterward when he asked about it. So that's kind of my thinking about it, but I'm not sure. But I'm definitely curious to see how the rest of that story plays out. Like I said, I didn't like the way they ended it. It was just really weird that they just cut it right there. It didn't feel like a complete story. So overall, while I enjoyed the shock factor of the episode, this one was actually one of my least favorites. It's probably my second to last on my list from favorite to least. The one on the bottom is still the episode 3, if the Avengers all die before even like forming as a team. But I am curious to see how the rest of the story plays out. Um, I'll move into episode 7 now, and that one was "What if Thor were an only child?" And it's the episode where we get to see Party Thor. And this one was once again, luckily, the complete opposite in terms of my feelings about it. I thought this episode was awesome from beginning to end, and it was by far the funniest episode of any of the episodes in What If. And like I just had a blast watching it, man. From beginning to end, I was like laughing my ass off. My favorite parts for the first time in the show was actually like the little art backstory that they give. Like in the previous episodes, it's like kind of cool to see, but it didn't really like add anything to me. But for this one, I don't know. I actually really liked the thing they showed here because they showed something that we hadn't seen about Thor and Loki's childhood from the Sacred Timeline, where like Loki was playing with the Chamber of Winters or something, the Frost Giant weapon. Um, and he like froze Thor in place. That was really cool. And then we saw the variation in this universe where Odin, instead of bringing him back to Asgard, gave him back to Laufey, and that's actually what created peace between their people. And we get to see Loki later on as a frost giant because he lived his life amongst his own people, and that was really cool. And then another moment that I really liked was everything with Howard the Duck and Darcy. That whole romance was hilarious, especially because I know like Howard the Duck, the movie that they made, like I think in the 90s, was like very crude, and Howard the Duck, I think, possibly in the comics, is like a very like womanizer of a character. So that was kind of fun and kind of funny, especially because like Darcy was actually pretty chill and cool about it too. And getting married by Elvis, and an Elvis impersonator was hilarious. That dude was funny as hell. Like the first time when he first showed up, I didn't like notice it, but I watched the episode a second time, and like right when Thor goes to Earth, he's like, "Holy moly!" And that part was like I chuckled the on that part the second time. Um, but all that stuff was great. And then, like I said, when Frost Giant Loki shows up to the party, and at first it seems like they're enemies still, but then they're like, "Nah, we're just playing." And you see Thor, he like grabs Loki's pinky instead of his hand because Loki's a frost giant, so he's huge. So Thor's hand just the only thing he could grab is just Loki's one of Loki's fingers, and that was funny as hell as well. And I just like seeing Frost Giant Loki. I think the design of it was really cool with his he still had the horns like he has in Asgard, but instead of like an actual crown, it's like an ice crown. So that was really dope. And another thing that I really liked about the episode was all the party shenanigans, like all of the national landmarks and monuments getting all destroyed or like moved and stuff. All of that stuff was kind of funny to see. And then the Thor versus Captain Marvel fight, that was dope, man. Like I think that's probably the best fight, like one-on-one fight that has happened in the series. Um, and I actually really like Captain Marvel here. Like I honestly like no, I don't have any problems with Brie Larson, but honestly think I like this Captain Marvel better than Brie Larson's Captain Marvel. Like the voice actress was actually really good and really likable in my opinion. I think this is probably the first time in the show where I actually prefer the voice actor over the live action actor. But hopefully Brie Larson gives us some good stuff in the next movie for her and whatever else she appears in. But it was dope when Thor and Captain Marvel like knocked each other to other countries across the ocean. I think it was Thor knocked her to the UK Stonehenge first, and he destroys Stonehenge, and then she punches him back to the US into a desert area. Um, and that whole fight was just dope. Like the fight in the clouds was really cool because it like looked like a some sort of crazy elemental storm. Like obviously lightning, like how we normally have, but then there was also the flashes of from her, which were like a yellowish color. So it had like a very like ominous tone. Like if it was just a human looking down at that, they'd be like, "Damn, what the hell is going on?" And that was just all really cool. And it was also cool seeing all the cameos. Like we saw a bunch of the Guardians. We saw Mantis. We saw Nebula. We saw Drax. We saw Rocket. Uh, that might have been it. And then we saw a lot of people from Thor Ragnarok as well, like Korg, the Grand Master, Scourge, the Executioner, and we saw some other people too from a bunch of the other different movies and from previous episodes of What If, like Coulson came back. We saw Maria Hill for the first time, which we got to see her as an acting director of Shield, which in the comics she's been the director before. But it was crazy, like the reason why she was the acting director. Korg just like ran straight through him to jump into a pool of water and knocked him the fuck out, which was insane. Oh yeah, and then we also saw Surtur, which that part was hilarious with the Statue of Liberty. He was like hitting on it. He thought it was a living thing, or I don't know, unless he was just messing around, and he accidentally melts the arm off, and then later he patches it back up by melding it. But yeah, all of that stuff was hilarious, man. I definitely had a blast watching this episode. And I'm not gonna say too much more, like, cause this one is just too good. You just gotta watch it, in my opinion. The last part that I liked was the very end, the Ultron cliffhanger, which I did not expect to happen in this episode. I thought it would be in the next episode, the one like right before the finale, which I think is gonna be Ultron as the main adversary. But we got it here, so I'm kind of like wondering if maybe the finale is actually going to be a two-parter, and next week's episode will be that story of Ultron with all the Infinity Stones and Vision's body. But maybe with that, Gamora as like Thanos or in Thanos' armor is going to factor in. But I don't know. We'll see. Like maybe that will be still its own separate thing, and then it'll tie in all together in the last episode. But I feel like that would be a lot to do in just one single episode unless it was like significantly longer than all of these ones have been. So I don't know. I'm kind of hoping it is a two-parter thing, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I love the design of Ultron Prime or whatever they're calling him. It's really dope with the Mind Stone obviously still in his head, and then I think the Time Stone was the one like kind of in the middle area of his chest, and then you have the other four going across. And he still has like the Ultron shell on the outside, but it's Vision's body like kind of wearing that outer armor, which I don't know why. Like maybe it's just an aesthetic thing, because obviously Vision's made out of vibranium, so he doesn't need that outer shell, but it looks badass. So maybe it's just he just wants to look cool. And he has the Infinity Stones already. I don't know how he got them, especially this early on, because as far as like what I could tell, it's supposed to take place where Thor 1 took place, which like the Avengers haven't even formed. So who made Ultron? I don't know. He could possibly be from another universe, and he found a way to travel through universes. But in that case, I don't know if the Infinity Stones would work. But I'm definitely curious to find out what the deal is with that. Um, and we know Thor is gonna meet Doctor Strange Supreme, so that also has to be something that factors in somehow. So I'm just excited for the last two episodes to see what happens and how everything comes together. We still got the ego cliffhanger, which is also gonna factor in with Peter Quill. So yeah, man, I just can't wait. That's all I'm gonna say for this review. So I know I said less about the one that I liked than I did about the one I didn't like, but that's all I have for this one. So this Party Thor episode actually is probably one of my favorites, like top three, probably my third favorite. I think my favorite is the zombies one still, and then maybe actually the T'Challa one I might like more than the Doctor Strange one overall. But I'll let you know when I do my final video for the last two episodes. I'll do a rewatch of all of them, and I'll like kind of do a re-ranking. So I'll let you know then. But yeah, this one's definitely up there for me. So thank you for watching my video. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye and peace.